Hello, everyone. Welcome. We have a good number of you. Some might continue to filter in, but I just want to get us started, kick us off, because we have a lot to cover tonight, all good things. One brief reminder before I pass it over to Bishop Austin for a welcome and a prayer. We do have simultaneous interpretation, so please remember to if you're phrasing questions to people in the future, to phrase them without using any kind of special lingo. Please avoid acronyms or any of those sorts of things. So I will pass it over to our lovely bishop for a welcome and a prayer.
Thank you, Ellie. Appreciate it. I wish I could see all of you on the screen right now, but I'm really thankful that you're here. It looks like we have 100 participants right now. That's wonderful. I want to say thank you for the time and the dedication that you've given to this evening and also to our convention as we prepare to meet together. And thank you also for everyone who is willing to stand for one of the elected offices. I appreciate your willingness to put yourself forward. And that's not an easy thing to do always. And so thank you for being willing to do that. I hope that your conversation tonight and your information gathering is fruitful. And I'm praying that that the gathering tomorrow will be a similar affair. But let's open up in some prayer and then I'll let you get to it. God be with you.
Awesome.
Let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, source of all wisdom and understanding, be present with us who gather tonight for your convention here in the Diocese of California. Teach us in all things to seek first your honor and glory. Guide us to perceive what is right, and grant us both the courage to pursue it and the grace to accomplish it. Through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Amen.
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 Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you. So we are going to start off with some orientation and announcements for everyone. Some of them are specific to this meeting. Some of these are to prepare you for our convention together in October. And then we will have a review of the canonical changes, followed by the resolution changes, and then we will hear from each of the nominees who are with us today. And you will have time to ask questions for resolutions and nominees. Please keep them informative. We are not having debate. We will save debate for convention. Brother Richard, would you like to help me with some announcements?
Sure. First of all, if you are an attendee and you have questions that are pertinent to what is being discussed or presented at any time, you can go ahead and put those in the chat, and Ellie and I will be monitoring that and can help moderate, making sure that those questions get directed to the right place. We're hoping to answer most of your questions tonight as we go, but if there are questions we don't get answered by the end of tonight's meeting, we will retain the chat and we will make sure we get back to you as promptly as we can. For those of you who attended conventions last year, we are following a very similar pattern this year. We'll be using many of the same resources. We'll be meeting in the same place. Our agenda will be very similar. So that will be familiar to you. If you are joining convention for the first time as a delegate or a cleric, there'll be a lot of information you receive tonight. It'll be a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. Just relax and roll with that. There'll be other ways you'll be getting much of this information in the coming days as well. So watch for that too. Just a reminder that the webinar tonight is being recorded and it will be posted at the convention website for your future reference. And Ellie, if you'd like to go ahead and put up the screen share, we can talk just a little bit about the convention site. All of the convention resources are posted in one place for your reference. It's diocalconvention.org. And we work very hard to get it arranged in a way that's easy and intuitive. You can see the links here to resolutions, to nominations. You will be seeing, I'm sorry, there is a link there to all of our convention documents, including the governing documents of the diocese and the convention. That's the Constitution, canons, and rules. I know that many of you are kind of allergic to those. Believe it or not, I don't revel in them either, except when I need to sleep. So they are there as a resource if you have questions about the governance, the way we do convention, the way we run the diocese. That's always a good place to go. And then other reports that will be relevant to our work at convention will be posted here, including financials. And something new this year is a link to the required trainings for anti-racism and safe church requirements. And everything you need to know is here, including links that go to details about what the diocese believes fulfills that mandate that we passed last year at convention, and links to go ahead and fulfill that mandate between now and convention. So as you have questions about that, you can be in touch with Amy Cook or Karen Miles at the diocesan office, and they can point you in the right direction as needed. Okay, back over to you, Ellie. I think Ellie's channel has frozen. So I'm going to go ahead and keep going, and when she catches up with us, we'll continue. About the convention location, we will be meeting again at Grace Cathedral in person on Saturday of convention, and that will be where we conduct our business and our formal votes. We also have time that we'll be meeting virtually on Friday evening again. That is a mandatory part of the convention because in addition to having presentations on the resolutions at that meeting, we're also going to hear a presentation from the Strategic Visioning Committee that has been meeting, particularly on the data that they gather from the meetings across the deaneries this month. So there's going to be fresh information there and some presentation, and then there'll be opportunity on Saturday for us to reflect together in that visioning process. So please plan to take full advantage of the evening time on Friday in addition to the in-person time on Saturday for the whole experience of convention. We are planning to use the V-poll system again this year for voting. What does that mean? It is very simple. It just means you need to bring a device with you to convention for voting. And we suggest you bring a device that's exclusively for voting, so you don't have to be flipping back and forth between screens on one device. It's possible, but it's not ideal. And any device that connects you with the internet will work for the V-poll interface. And we're going to have opportunity at convention to practice a little bit. In fact, part of the registration process, as it was last year, will be actually getting on V-poll, and that's how we will count you as present for the quorum count. So please make sure you bring a device with you. If you do not have a device you can bring with you, there'll be opportunity to let us know in the registration process, and we can go ahead and reserve a device for your use during convention. And we'll be getting more information out about that along with registration in the next few weeks. Ellie, are you back with us?
I am. I froze for a second there.
Great. Unfrozen.
Woo.
Ellie, do you want to take things up from there?
Sure. We will have tech chaplains on hand again at convention. So if you are struggling with BPOL or anything, signing in, any of that stuff, we'll have people on hand to help you with that when you arrive and throughout the convention. And they are lifesavers. I highly suggest.
Terrific. There was a question in the chat. What is the scheduled time for the convention start on Friday? Right now, we have the agenda to open at 5 o'clock. And so if you can plan on setting aside 5 to 8 on Friday, that should be sufficient time for the business that we need to take care of on Friday evening. Another question was about an all-deanery meeting tomorrow. There will be an all-deanery meeting tomorrow, but it's going to be conducted primarily in Spanish, and it's geared towards our Spanish-speaking communities in the diocese to give them a chance to engage with the material and also engage with each other and give a sense to the authors of the resolutions and those running what the priorities are for the Spanish-speaking communities in the diocese. We encourage everyone to join us for that tomorrow. It'll be at the same time, 6 to 8 on Wednesday evening. Ellie, do you want to talk about parking?
Yes. We will have parking, same place. You can use the Grace Cathedral. If it's full, you can go over to the Masonic parking. We do highly suggest that you consider using carpool options, especially if you're coming from a distance. And if you're coming from nearby, public transit is great and will help reduce parking fees and costs as well. So those are other options for you, and those will be posted on the website, all of those locations as we get nearer.
This question was raised in the chat, and it just so happens it comes up on the agenda now. Yes, we will have power charging stations available at the cathedral the day of convention. That said, we encourage you to come with your devices fully charged, and if you have a spare charging battery, bring that with you because the charging stations will be limited in number.
We are investigating childcare options. Some of you who needed childcare last year will know that we did reimbursement. That is possible, but we have not solidified childcare, and we will have fuller announcements for you on that, but it will be there.
And we are preparing a convention booklet this year, as we do every year. We should have that ready and posted 2 weeks ahead of convention. That will include all of the materials for the business of convention and some of the key reports. And we are not planning to print those, so we encourage you to print your own if you want a printed copy. Otherwise, it will be in a PDF format. You can bring that on your device for your reference. And in addition to that, whenever we are discussing business, such as a resolution during convention, the text of the resolution will be up on the large screen, so it will be visible to everyone, even beyond their own devices.
Wi-Fi will again be available in Grace Cathedral. If you have cellular service, we do encourage you to use that because some people don't. And so allowing people who really need the Wi-Fi to use that and utilize that is helpful. But it will be there. If you are concerned about that, we will have Wi-Fi available for voting and other purposes.
Closed captioning will be available. We are looking into options other than having everything on a single screen, but we will let you know what those closed captioning options are closer to convention as soon as the plans are fully developed. Finally, just to talk briefly about the agenda for convention, as I said earlier, it will be very similar to last year's convention in terms of structure and timing. That said, a key piece of this agenda will be given over to talking about the visioning process, including some initial reports on what was brought up at all of the deanery meetings for the visioning process that are occurring this month. With that in mind, I encourage you to attend at least one of those meetings. They are posted on the main website. They're being held locally in just about every deanery of the diocese over the next few weeks. And you are warmly invited to come and speak your mind. That'll be very important. Bishop Austin, in conversation with the dispatch of business committee. We dispatch committees all the time, right? Some should be dispatched for that matter. Bishop Austin, in conversation with dispatch, has articulated his sense that this convention is meant to be a bridge between the past for the diocese and also the future. And much of what comes out of the visioning process in the next year will influence the structure of our next convention in 2025. So that's why this convention is going to look similar, but we're also going to be tying some pieces into what we are doing together at this time to move forward into a spirit-led future together. So that will be very clear and evident as we go forward. All right, so the agenda for the rest of the meeting, presentation on canonical changes, resolutions, and then presentations for the nominees. So shall I take it from there, Ellie?
Yeah, you're up for
Okay.
the canonical
So I
one.
guess I'm up first. Proposed changes to our primary governing documents this year are relatively simple. We have before us two related proposals. One is to change the Constitution, which is to address a problem that some of you may have noticed we had at the electing convention. And electing a new bishop wasn't stressful enough. Our first point of stress was whether we would have a clergy quorum present. And Dave Franquist and I were anxiously checking the numbers as we rolled out of worship. And we ended up having to postpone the beginning of the electing convention for about 20 minutes, waiting until we had a clergy quorum in hand. This is a little bit new. When we elected Bishop Mark about 18 years ago, we easily made our clergy quorum. But times have changed. The demographics of the clergy have changed. And many clergy are no longer able to afford to live in the diocese after they retire. So we have a lot more clergy living outside of the diocese. So in conversation with the standing committee and with Bishop Austin's consent, we have put together a resolution that will change the requirements for clergy quorum in an electing convention to be clergy representing at least 2/3 of the congregations of the diocese, full stop. And that parallels the requirements for lay delegate quorum at the electing convention. It's cleaner that way, and it's much simpler, and it will scale with the diocese as we go forward, whether we grow, whether we continue to decline some, or whether we stay about the same. It'll just make clergy quorum easier to achieve. And the other thing that I've done in conversation with Dave Franquist and Canon Christopher Hayes, our chancellor, has been cleaning up some of the language in this constitutional passage and the parallel language in the canons about quorum, just to make it clearer. It's not a change in substance, it's just a change in the language to make it easier to understand. So that is what I have to report, but you can go ahead and look at the proposed constitutional and canonical changes on the convention website. And if you have questions or comments, you can leave them there. And I'll be happy to respond to those as they come in over the next few weeks. Any questions about that? Okay. Darren asked, will the canonical change be enforced a year before the constitutional change? The short answer is yes. The canonical change actually is only a clarification to the language about quorum. It's not a substantive change. So that will come into effect first. But the substantive change will be in the Constitution, and that will require 2 conventions to pass. Any other questions? Okay, with Ellie's permission, go ahead and turn the floor over to Dave Franquist, who's going to lead us through a conversation on the resolutions.
Well, thank you, Brother Secretary. Our Secretary mentioned that many of you don't revel in canons and constitutions and things like that. Well, I do, but I'm weird that way. Anyway, if you have questions about such things, I'm always happy to deal with them. On resolutions, this year we have 3 resolutions for consideration by the convention. Unless there is some emergency in the next 7 weeks that begs for a resolution, that means the convention should not need to vote on adding any resolutions this year. We can have up to 5. We have 3, which is nice. There was a 4th resolution, Resolution 2 on factory farming. Following discussions between the proponent of Resolution 2, Adam Dormus, and the Committee on Resolutions, Adam has decided to withdraw the resolution. That decision should not be understood to in any way diminish the importance of the issue addressed by the resolution. The discussions focused exclusively on the suitability and effectiveness of a convention resolution as a vehicle for achieving Adam's desired improvements for the welfare of farm animals. The Committee on Resolutions would like to thank Adam for his willingness to engage in these discussions and the gracious manner in which he communicated his decision to us. You've already been shown where the resolutions are on the convention website. If you can't remember the big long name of the convention website that Brother Secretary gave you, you can also get there by going to the diocesan website, clicking on Governance, and then clicking on Annual Convention, and that will take you to the convention website. When you go to resolutions and you drill down in the individual resolutions, you will see a place at the bottom to add a comment. We encourage you to submit comments as a way to begin the discussion and expand on the limited 15 minutes that are allocated to each resolution for debate on the day of convention. We'd like to remind everyone that the Committee on Resolutions does continue to work with proponents on fine-tuning the resolutions, and there may still be changes to the text. We hope you are scheduling time at your September deanery convocations for discussion of the resolutions. We may make changes based on comments and feedback from the deaneries. Anytime we post a change, we will indicate the date of the update on the website. So you should be able to check quickly to see if there's anything you need to look at. We will do our best to freeze all changes 2 weeks before the convention, so be sure to check the resolutions page during those 2 weeks. This session is intended to introduce you to the resolutions and give you an opportunity to ask questions. Please use the question time for questions only and not for statements for or against the resolutions. Debate should be saved for the deanery convocations, for posting comments, and for the day of convention. I think we had decided we would use the Q&A feature in Zoom to ask questions. Is that right, Ellie? Brother
That is
Secretary
correct.
said chat, so that is correct. Okay, so please use the Q&A feature, not chat, to ask your questions, and we will read them to the sponsors. If there are questions that we don't get to, you may get a written response from the sponsors, but we're making no promises. Now let's get started. Resolution number 1 is Addressing Christian Nationalism. It will be presented by Pamela Cruz Buckingham and Paula Hawthorne. Pamela and Paula, take it away.
Thank you. I am going first and I'm setting up the general reasons for this resolution. And then Pam is going to drill down into the details. So we're going to hand off, hopefully within a couple of minutes each, or I will probably be even faster than that. So yes, this is the resolution on dealing with white nationalism. This comes from the Social Justice Committee of St. Paul's, Oakland, and it is an expression of our very deep desire for our church to stand up strongly and to say what Jesus is about, and to make this very positive. We're not in the business of telling anybody that they're not good people or whatever, but instead saying this is what we believe Jesus calls us to do. We reference one of the covenants of our baptismal covenants in the resolution, but the other one that I wanted to discuss is, will you proclaim by word and example the good news of God in Christ? And we say, I will with God's help. And that is what we are trying to do with this resolution, is to form a way for churches, for congregations, for individuals within our church to strongly state that Christianity is all-encompassing, is about love, and is not about the what is being talked about in Christian nationalism. The reason that we are doing this is during Lent, we read one of many books on the rise of Christian nationalism. I think you could do a whole bibliography on that, and we have some things in our references. And so we read that to try to understand what was happening to evangelical churches. And also for me personally, and I know this has happened to other friends of mine as well, as I am talking about my faith with others, I find that with the rise of Christian nationalism, there is a feeling from other people that Christianity is a bad thing, you know? And I have heard of clergy who've been had bad things said to them when they're wearing their collars. I mean, things are happening as a result of this takeover of Christianity by these nationalists. So that's the major reason for this. And this is a hopefully a program where we can marshal resources within our wonderful Diocese of California to help people to speak up for Jesus. I call this our Stand Up for Jesus resolution. And with that, I'll give it to you, Pam.
Thank you, Paula. This comes from a lot of deep discernment, first of all, so I want to say that. This is a living document, and it's gone through several iterations already in this process, and I feel like it's getting stronger and stronger. And so we invite everybody to reach out. Paula and I have our emails in the document, so you can tell us what you think. And we've made a lot of edits based on consultation with lots of really good minds. So we're trying to gather the hive mind here on this thing. And so what we thought was, at least when we were talking about this in our group at St. Paul's, and we wanted to be able to say, okay, this is an important thing to say, that we renounce this. What's the language we should be using? Because we're Episcopalians, right? There's a place to go get that stuff, right? But we realized that it wasn't really there. So we really want to start this conversation, and we really want there to be a toolkit for anybody in the diocese to go and use, and be able to have resources and language and thoughtful, discerned group of documents and items that we can draw from to address this, like an elevator speech, right? Or just whatever way we want to communicate this with people. So that's what we're hoping to do. We're hoping to create a group of volunteers to spend a couple years hashing this out and making this happen. What's happening in the world in our government right now is still fraught, and I really feel like it's time. We really feel like it's time for us to have our church say it. Say it. It's wrong. This is wrong. This is the way of Jesus. So that's kind of what we are wanting to build with this, and create like as big a group mind as possible around how do we communicate this out with love and compassion and empathy, and to the real world for real people to use. So I hope I haven't talked too long.
Thank you, Pamela and Paula. We have about 4 minutes for questions. If you have a question, please put it in the Q&A. And our question readers are standing by.
Or if you're shy right now and want to think about it, email us too. That's fine.
Right, we do have a question.
Yes, we do. This question comes from Deb White. How does this resolution relate to and or build on the work of the General Convention in this area in June?
That's a really good question. I don't know that I can answer that straight off, Deb. I believe it's in our list of stuff because we knew that there was discussion around this, and I believe some of the language we grabbed is part of that, but I feel like this can build on that. I don't know if that answers your question, but as a person who communicates for the church, I need more. We need more.
Yeah, so I don't know if you all have had a chance to read the resolution, but in it, we have several specific things that this group is going to be providing: educational materials, articles, videos, sermon resources, language and imagery guidelines, a lot of specific things. And those specific tools, and I think, Pam, we even called it a toolbox at one point. Those specific tools did not come out of the General Convention. The General Convention came out with a lot of really good definitions and resolutions, but a toolbox for going on social media, for speaking to your neighbors, for whatever. That is what we're thinking of for this. And of course,
Yeah, apparently.
but what the group will be doing is going to be up to the group as well. So we can't dictate too much.
Say, for example, we wanted to make signs and we were going to go to some sort of, I don't know, protest thing, and we wanted to join it, and we had our signs. What language can we use? What logos can we use? What's approved? What's not okay? Those are the kind of things we want to know, so that when we are preparing to take action, that we're using the appropriate language and stuff. I think that's really important, that if we have a message, that it's uniform and that we're all saying the same thing, using the same visuals, having the same language around it, etc.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Do our question readers want to choose one?
From Rebecca Hayes, Estera, How does this look inward at how Christian nationalism is present in our own churches and spaces, and not just looking outwards at evangelicals?
I think that's really a great question. And I think that's part of this discernment that's going to happen around this. It's not like I'm not picturing it as something where we're sitting around pointing out. I'm thinking that, this is something where we're talking to the other stakeholders and we're talking to our neighbors and we're talking to the denominations around us to discern what this means in a community context, what it means in a way that is unifying.
Okay, thank you. In order to stay on some kind of schedule, we're going to need to move on to the next resolution. And I would encourage the sponsors of Resolution 1 to look at the question in the Q&A and respond in writing. So our next resolution is Resolution 3. It's on the 50th anniversary triennium of the ordination of women and local commemorations. And it will be presented by Warren Wong, and he may call on somebody else too. We'll see. Warren.
Good evening, Bishop Austin, Diocal clergy and staff, and fellow delegates to the 175th Diocesan Convention. My name is Warren Wong from St. James in San Francisco. The Reverend Paula Nesbitt and the Reverend Dr. Cameron Partridge and I are authors of Resolution Number 3. General Convention Resolution D055 comes from Diocal and a result of our 80th anniversary programs around Lee Team Oy that took place in January of 2024. We and 3 other dioceses, New York, Los Angeles, and across the pond in the Diocese of London, had programs to honor Lee Team Oy as the first woman priest in the Anglican Communion. Each of these diocesan advisory groups hosts, celebrated, and commemorated activities including formation programs, keynote speakers. And there's a number of speakers, but I don't want to get into that because it might be too much detail at this point, but we'll share later. What we learned from our advisory team members from this 2022 to 2024 during the Lee Team Oy events was best practices to carry forward. Afterward, Reverend Paula and I discussed the need not just to commemorate the Philadelphia 11, but to chronicle and share the continued struggle of women's ordination to the priesthood between General Convention 1973 and in Louisville and the first ordinations that took place as a result of General Convention in 1976 in Minneapolis. This is why Paula, Cameron, and I decided to focus on a 1974 to 77 time period as a triennial commemoration. Regarding the second resolve, we have 5 bullet points acknowledging the 60th anniversary of Phyllis Edwards, the 50th anniversary of Nettie Rivera, the 40th anniversary of the Reverend Dr. Fran Toy, the 30th anniversary of both Barbara Bender Breck and Catherine Ward, and the 20th anniversary of Carolyn Bolton for our own diocese in 2025. These are the pioneers that represent our firsts in the diaconal community, Latina, Asian, African American, and communities for ordination in Diocal. As we reach out with Bishop Austin's strategic planning vision sessions around Diocal, we'd like to see greater participation beyond the diaconal and people of color communities in the 2025, 26, and 27 advisory group. I'm having these events and activities around the Diocal enriches all of our communities and clericus as a diocesan community. Finally, we are fortunate a number of these pioneers are among us, and although we are missing few who have passed, we stand on their shoulders because of their discernment, vocation, and call to a lifetime of ministry that made our congregations, diocese, and church-wide disciples spread God's inclusive love. Thank you. And we have a few FAQ questions which we will share with you later during the Q&A time. And that's all I have to share. Are there any things that you have that you want Paula or Cam to add to this?
Yes, I would just like to say that one of the really significant aspects of this, both in what we did around the Reverend Florence Lee Tim Oy, and also in putting together resolution DO55, and I was privileged to be able to help out on that, was that it helped us to grasp the history, and particularly history that may have been lost if it's not grasped now. Cameron and I have been engaged in delving through the history of Phyllis Edwards. And there is quite a significant story to tell about related to the history of the diocese and the life of the diocese that is evolved today. So that these commemorations, whether it's a parish that has had somebody significant as part of their community and they want to commemorate that, or whatever they would like to do, that will involve both learning and teaching and communicating the history so that it is passed on and kept alive and appreciated and hopefully inspire future generations.
Thank you. We have a few minutes for questions if you want to type them into the Q&A.
While we're waiting for questions to roll in, just a gentle reminder to everyone who's with us to be sure you speak slowly so our interpreter can keep up with the translation. Thank you.
Not seeing a question. Warren, was there an FAQ that you particularly wanted to highlight?
Yeah, let me read the FAQ. Here's one or two of them. Are these the only commemorations that will take place? And the answer is no. The 5 to 6 milestones reflected in the second resolve are planned for 2025. We are developing a 2026 list of milestones to present to the 176th convention. And for 2027, we're planning a special commemoration program around the Reverend Dr. Paulie Murray. I think that's good to know. And another question that comes up is, who appoints the members to this advisory commission, and can anyone volunteer? We are asking for Bishop Austin to appoint the group to this advisory commission or advisory group, and anyone can volunteer for this. So those are two questions there for y'all. Anything else?
I see one in the Q&A. Oh, that was on the first, I'm sorry, that was on the first resolution. So if there's nothing else coming up on resolution number 3, then I think we can move to resolution number 4, which is diocesan support for the Association of Episcopal Deacons. And it will be presented by Jonathan Owens. John.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm John Owens. I am the deacon serving at Christ Church Sausalito. I have been ordained in this diocese for 12 years. And I also serve on the board for the Association of Episcopal Deacons. And many people don't realize often that deacons don't really actually get a lot of support financially and resources. We're just kind of left hanging half the time with our ministries. And I don't think people really understand half the time even what a deacon does. And so there is a professional organization out there. It is not supported by the actual Episcopal Church budget. So it's very similar to kind of like the College of Bishops, for example. They're not technically part of TC. They're outside the purview, but they support the work of bishops. And in this case, Association for Episcopal Deacons supports the work of deacons. There are over 3,000 deacons across the country. And this is the only resource we really have professionally to try to help share and pull resources. And so we went in, and out of those 3,000, we have one part-time director, and that's a lot of work for one person to do, to try to be able to keep everything together, keep all our resources together. And so we went to General Convention this year and had some success where we asked General Convention to actually get the Executive Council of the Episcopal Church to consider putting the Association for Episcopal Deacons in for some money to help us become more sustainable. But the resolution also passed that encouraged dioceses and churches to get involved. So now I'm here to figure out what we can do as a diocese. And I think one of the best things we can do, since it's a membership organization, is to ask the diocese pay for every deacon to be a member. And the reason why we're asking the diocese is technically, as deacons, we serve at the behest of the bishop. We are an extension of the bishop's ministry. And not every deacon serves in a parish. And there are many that are retired. And the fiscal impact is pretty small when you consider it's probably about $5,000 a year. So we're not talking about a huge budget. And we're not even, and this wouldn't even impact next year's budget. We're asking for 2026. We're asking in 2025 for congregations to consider helping pay those professional dues, which are $100 per person. If they're retired, it's $50. And again, that gives them access to resources. Hopefully they'll come out on the triennial every year after General Convention. There is a convention that the Association for Episcopal Deacons puts together to hold nationally people. They also host things like bringing all the archdeacons together once a year and talking in formation directors and talking about what it looks like to help form deacons. And so there's just a lot of different ways to kind of that it builds kind of a networking. And I'm hoping that this diocese will be behind supporting their deacons.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions about this? You may be wondering why, there's this two steps with the congregations first and then the diocese. And that's because, our preparation for convention is a little out of sync with itself. We start working on the budget in April, but we don't have resolutions come in until July, by which time the budget is done, and it's really difficult to go back and make changes to the budget. So that's why we're suggesting that congregations pick up the slack in the interim year, and then move it to the diocese. But does that mean that congregations have to stop supporting their deacons after a year? Of course not. This is just a way to get the ball rolling. There are questions, I think, in the Q&A.
Yes, we have two questions. The first is, the ask is for $5,000 to the Association of Episcopal Deacons, the diocese, for a year. Or is that for parishes? That's
Well, yeah. So the answer is that's kind of an estimate ballpark based on my calculations of how many deacons there are in the diocese. So it's basically providing their membership dues. So however many deacons you have that are in active ministry, that's times 100. And then every deacon who's retired, considered a retired deacon, that's times $50. And that's how we came up. And it's an annual membership. It's an annual fee that, as deacons, we pay ourselves half the time, unless you got a congregation that's willing to pay it. And so this is, again, another great way to support deacons that are often nominally stipend if they're stipend at all.
Ellie, you want to go ahead and take the next question?
Yeah. What benefits does membership in the Association of Episcopal Deacons provide for a deacon?
Yeah, great. It's mainly, again, a way they host continuing education. They partner with the seminaries. The Association for Episcopal Deacons also does a lot of consulting around the canons and developing competencies around that. So there is kind of a standard that not every diocese is out there kind of just doing their own thing, but kind of really trying to build a kind of a common core standard among deacons. Well, I'll give you my own personal. I joined Association of Episcopal Deacons because when I was ordained in this diocese, I was 31. There was no deacon around near my age. Everyone, the median age of a deacon nationally is 68, according to the church benching group. So when they called me, I wasn't even a member, and they said, we got a grant for you to come to this triennial event, and we want all the young deacons that we can get there. At the time, they were able to get 12 of us to the nationally. And it was the first time I had ever seen a young deacon near my age. And that's why I realized this was an important group to be able to sustain. And since then, they've created several affinity groups so deacons can network across different types of things, whether they're young or they're retired or they do rural ministry. And so having these networks to be able to support people and find people that are doing what you're doing, it's very helpful.
And then a couple of related questions, so I'm going to put them together into one. First, how many deacons are there in the diocese? And second, what is the percentage of deacons in the diocese who are dues-paying members of the Association of Episcopal Deacons?
So the first answer is there are 23 active deacons, 3 deacons in formation, and 41 retired deacons amongst 73 parishes, according to the DioCal website. And I cannot tell you how many are members. If I had to guesstimate, I would say probably about 50%.
Another question, this is from Anna Marie Hose, asks, do other dioceses pay the AED dues for deacons?
There are some dioceses that do that. And so that's why I built off of this, but it also, I built this resolution specifically because this came from a general convention resolution that was passed this summer. So this is pretty much saying, well, general convention calls on us to do something with this resolution. So what are we going to do with it? And I can also, one other thing I'll tell you, the last time the Diocese of California did something for AED specifically was they cut a $200 check 4 or 5 years ago. So literally that is the support that this diocese is given. And the majority of anything that's in the budget for deacons, to be clear, is for school for deacons for formation. There's nothing after you've been ordained.
I think we have one more question.
Does this resolution provide this membership for vocational deacons only or for both vocational and transitional deacons?
It's primarily for vocational deacons because, again, we're talking about, I mean, you can be a priest and join AED, but again, the AED really is there to support vocational deacons.
Okay, if there are no other questions, that about uses up our time. So, Brother Secretary, do I pass it back to you or pass it off to Stephen?
We'll pass it off to Stephen Siptroth, who's going to help introduce all of the nominees this evening.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is the Reverend Stephen Siptroth, and it's a pleasure to be with you on behalf of the Committee on Nominations. It's my privilege to introduce the nominees for the different offices that will be elected at convention in October. Before I do that, I would like to thank the other members of the committee that I served with. From the Alameda Deanery, Don Miller and the Reverend Jim Dolan. From Contra Costa Deanery, Jim Wyatt. And from the Marin Deanery, Anna Haight and Bill Burrell. Thank you all. And now I would like to introduce the nominees by office and by order, beginning with our nominees for the Executive Council. And with that office, we'll begin with the clergy order and the Reverend Kira Austin Young, who's with us this evening.
Good evening. Is there anything in particular, a way to frame my remarks or anything in particular that I should address during this time, Stephen?
Oh, thank you, Reverend Kira. I would welcome just an introduction of yourself, maybe reasons why you're running for this office. And Brother Secretary, is there anything else that you think that the nominees should cover?
No, this is what we sometimes call your elevator speech. Why are you running? Yeah.
Good evening. I'm so glad you all have joined us this evening. My name is Kira Austin Young. I've been a priest in the Diocese of California for 2 years now as the Associate Rector of St. Mary the Virgin in San Francisco. Prior to that, I was in the Diocese of Tennessee, where I was ordained and have served 2 terms on what is called the Bishop and Council in the Diocese of Tennessee, but is equivalent in form and function to the Executive Council here in Diocese of California. I'm currently also the clergy vice president of the San Francisco Deanery, and serve on the Bishop's Ranch Board of Directors and on the Philanthropy Committee as part of that work. Why am I standing for election is I think this is a really exciting time for us in the Diocese of California with a new bishop, and really excited to work alongside Bishop Austin, Canon Sierra, our other Dio House staff, to just continue to see where God is calling us, meeting where God is active in the world, and seeing how we can use, the structures and the resources of the Diocese of California, in particular to support ministry and mission on the ground in our parishes and mission stations, and the work that our ministers are doing, both lay and clergy, in the Bay Area. So with that, I will turn it back over to Stephen.
Thank you, Kira. And before moving on to our next nominee, I just wanted to apologize. It dawned on me that when I turned to Brother Richard to ask a question, I neglected that Brother Richard also is on the Committee on Nominations by virtue of being secretary, and Christine Benson is on the committee as our Executive Council representative, and the Reverend Jane Stratford is on our committee as the Standing Committee representative. Apologies for the split word of thanks and introduction of you all. Next, for the Executive Council from the Clergy Order is the Reverend Annalise Deal.
Hello, friends. It's so nice to be with you all tonight. My name is Annalise, and I am one of the newest priests in this diocese. I was just ordained in June, but I've grown up in the Diocese of California. I was born and raised at Trinity Menlo Park and have attended a number of different churches over the years. I'm running for a position on Executive Council for a pretty specific reason, with the support and backing of the Diocesan Young Adult Task Force, which I've served on for a couple of years. We wanted to put somebody forward for Executive Council with the goal of both adding more diverse age representation to Executive Council, and to support the young adults of this diocese. But in my personal ministry, I'm also interested in supporting the children and youth of the diocese. So really all of the young people of our diocese. On the Young Adult Task Force, we define young adults as those under 40, which makes me a very young adult. I'm 27. And so I think that would bring down the age of the average executive council member probably pretty substantially. And I would just hope to represent, uplift, and support the youngest members of our diocese. I feel very blessed that I grew up at Trinity Menlo Park with lots of friends my own age, with lots of kids and young people. But over the past 10 years, since I left there and since I began discerning my own call to priesthood, I've experienced the Episcopal Church as less and less multi-generational. And that's something that makes me sad. I loved growing up in a multi-generational community, and I think it's one of our greatest gifts, and that we need to seriously think about the ways in which we're failing to include young people in the church in our current iteration, and how we can do better in those spaces, and how we can genuinely celebrate multi-generationality, meaning that we would honor, of course, our aging members and all of the gifts that they bring to our communities, and also really make a much more concerted effort towards welcoming and including children, youth, and young adults. I've spent the past 10 years of my own ministry. The process of being called to the priesthood for me took a really long time, since I started discerning when I was in high school. So I've spent the past 10 years in a myriad of different ministry roles, mostly working with children, youth, and young adults. And in all of the different roles I've served in, I believe that I have a track record of growing both in number and in involvement, the number of people in those ministries. Another really important part of my formation has been multicultural immersion experiences. A couple that have been really important to me in particular were serving in a service learning program in Chile for 7 months, which also gave me the gift of learning Spanish pretty well. Teaching for a couple of years at a low-income Episcopal middle school in Boston. That was over 97% students of color. And completing my CPE at San Francisco Night Ministry, which serves our unhoused neighbors in San Francisco. Something that is important for you to know about me right now, in addition to all of these other experiences that I've had, is that I'm actually not serving at this moment in a church in the Diocese of California. So I'm canonically resident in DioCal. I continue to be very involved in DioCal in a number of ways, but I'm serving as the associate rector at St. Jude's in Cupertino, which is in the Diocese of El Camino Real. My primary involvement in the Diocese of California right now is on the Young Adult Task Force, which I mentioned at the beginning. I served on the Clergy Housing Task Force last year, and I'm the chaplain to both of the youth summer camps at the Bishop's Ranch. And I'm married to the priest of St. John the Evangelist, so I'm as involved a member of that community as I can be, including helping to lead the young adults there, which is a thriving group for a very small mission. I'm really excited about this opportunity. I hope that you all consider not only me, but consider what an opportunity it might be to have somebody from the Young Adult Task Force and somebody who's so well connected to children and youth on Executive Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Annalise. Now turning to the nominees for the lay from the lay order for Executive Council, we'll begin with Brad Barber.
Hello, everyone. I feel that in some ways I'm balancing the image of the last speaker, at least in terms of age. And that made me think long and hard about whether I wanted to seek membership on the Executive Council again. I had served for about 5 years as an appointed member by Bishop Angus. And I also served as treasurer of the diocese for 2 years. So I am familiar with the Executive Council and with the diocese. I'm a member of St. Stephen's Parish in Orinda, have been for about 30 years. And during that time, I've served in several ministries, several committees, commissions, and task forces. The reason I felt called, and it's something I struggled with, but the reason I felt called to put my name forward again is that I think I bring experience in law, business, finance, that will be useful to the diocese at this time. My greatest concern is that I, like all of us, have sadly seen the membership in the diocese and in almost all denominations decline over the years. And that decline means several things. It means our overriding mission is harder, but it also means our financial ability to discharge that mission is harder. So we need to think carefully and hard about the financial consequences of our decisions, to focus on how we can grow the church, especially younger members of the church, but those in midlife and older members as well, how to reach the unchurched, how to call back those who have drifted away. But we need financial resources to do that. And what I would bring, or what I would hope to bring, is a focus on building endowment, fundraising, and financial stewardship. Many of you know that I was a lawyer in private practice in past life. So I am a recovering, or now fully recovered lawyer, retired. I also served as in a capacity that included fundraising and endowment investment at the University of California at San Francisco, at Berkeley, and a system-wide office, as well as Children's Hospital in Oakland. So if it's useful to have someone with that kind of background on the executive council, I would be happy to serve again. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad. Our next nominee is Anthony May. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly.
Thank you. Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm Anthony May. I'm a fourth generation San Franciscan with deep roots and an abiding interest in our city and in the Bay Area. However, I was raised in New York, Saudi Arabia, and Rome. Traveled widely in the United States, Europe, Asia, and the Pacific. And I think these experiences have given me an interest in and an understanding of a broad range of cultures. Professionally, I'm a registered professional civil engineer. I also hold a project management professional certification. I've been a lifelong volunteer with Scouting America, from the local through the national level. Recently, I served 8 years as the chair of the National Disabilities Awareness Committee at headquarters, Boy Scouts of America. Currently, I'm a scoutmaster of a troop in San Francisco that is sponsored by the Konko Church and serves the Japantown community. A little diversity here. I've coached Special Olympics for the past 16 years. And earlier in my volunteer life, I chaired the Marin County Special Education Advisory Committee for 18 years. Currently, I represent St. Francis of Assisi in Novato, and also on the Marin Deanery. I've been active at St. Francis for the last 13 years, past 8 of which I was on the vestry. I served as the junior warden for 2 years and as a senior warden for 3 years during the pandemic, with no rector for full time for the last 2.5 years of that. by the way, we managed to have the Eucharistic services every Sunday except one during those 31 months. And by the way, the parish sustained its membership during that time as well. I want my career experience working at the regional level to further impact the church throughout the Diocese of California. We need to demonstrate our beliefs by leading and participating in activities that are of major relevance to our community today. See some of these activities as some of the following. First of all, working for environmental causes. I worked in the environmental field throughout my career with the Environmental Protection Agency and the Army Corps of Engineers, managing projects in Arizona, California, Guam, New Mexico, Nevada, and Utah. Okay. Also, see a need to address the needs of our immigrant community and seeking solutions for homelessness. I've been an active participant in my parish's community pantry for the past 2 years, and this pantry primarily serves both of those populations on a twice-weekly basis. Another activity is caring for and supporting our youth. I've been a scout leader for over 30 years in the Bay Area and have been a champion for diversity and for inclusion of those scouts and scouters, that's what we call the adult volunteers, who have special needs and disabilities. The last activity area that we need to be looking at is expanding our ministry to our, I'm going to use an acronym, LGBTQ+ community. I have immediate family living in San Francisco who are members of this community. So I can identify with what the needs are. I look forward to serving the diocese as an active member of the Executive Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Our last nominee for the Executive Council from the lay order is Christian Rideout.
Okay, hello. I'm Chris Rideout. I'm a member at St. Clements in Berkeley. I've been a member of the vestry recently. I don't really claim as much history and experience as the other two candidates. I'm interested in learning more about the church at the diocesan level. I'm back in the Episcopal Church for 21 years now. My professional life, I'm an insurance broker. Most of my work involves, over the years, has involved construction insurance. I also am reasonably well-traveled. I lived for a time in Madagascar, and I'm actually in touch occasionally with clergy in the church in Madagascar. So that's my interest. My interest is really in learning more about the diocesan level and being of service if needed and if wanted. So what else could I say? I'm also a frequent participant in worship activities at St. Clements, and other volunteer things there. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. That concludes our introduction of the Executive Council nominees. Brother Secretary, should there be a time for questions of the nominees, or should we continue with introductions?
I believe we had set aside open question time. let me just ask the question of the panelists. Would it make sense for us to pause at after the introduction of the nominees for each governing body and have some questions and answers? Does that make sense? Yeah, I'm getting thumbs up. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll just open things up. If you have questions and answers for any of the nominees for Executive Council, now's the time to raise them. We'll leave the question open for, or the opportunity to ask questions open for just about 30 more seconds. Question from Darren Miner addressed to Annalise. Do you intend to stay canonically resident in this diocese for the foreseeable future?
Yes, I should have said this, but I'm currently one of the Trinity Wall Street Curacy Fellows. So all graduates from CDSP now have the opportunity to be a part of this new Trinity Wall Street Curacy program, which will keep me canonically resident in DioCal. I already worked at St. Jude's, and Bishop Austin was so generous to allow me to stay there and stay canonically resident here in the Diocese of California.
And Stephanie Green had a follow-up question for you, Annalise. How is your experience at St. Jude's and in El Camino Real bringing new perspectives for you to the Diocese of California?
Sure, that's a great question. So one of the things that I'm doing at St. Jude's is trying to work more with De Anza College, which is one of the community colleges right across the street. It's right across the street from our campus, to do more outreach there. Historically, the Episcopal Church has really only done campus ministry on mostly private university campuses. That's not true, and actually in our diocese, which is great. We have 2 campus ministries on public university campuses, but 0 on community college campuses, which is pretty typical across the country and something that some people like me and a couple other young adults in this diocese are trying to change. So I'm learning about what it looks like to do community college ministry and communicating with people in this diocese. I live in the Mission, very close to the City College Mission campus, so that may eventually be a possible field of interest for me. And I really hope that our diocese will more heavily invest in community college ministries, and I know that's a hope that's shared across all of the young adult task force. There, of course, the concerns in the South Bay are very, very similar to the concerns of the Peninsula Deanery, and we do a lot of collaboration with Trinity Menlo Park, with Christ Church Los Altos. So all of the churches basically in the Peninsula Deanery are frequent ministry partners for us at St. Jude's.
Thank you so much. And Stephanie Green also wanted to ask a question of Kira that's similar, and your experiences in Tennessee, how do those inform your ministry and the vision you bring to the Diocese of California?
Yeah, so one thing I'll say is that when Bishop John Bowerschmidt came into the Diocese of Tennessee, the Diocese of Tennessee was in a very, very fractious place, kind of in the wake of Gene Robinson and some of the sort of sexuality wars, and to the point where, I mean, shortly before I was ordained and entered the discernment process, I mean, clergy weren't even taking communion with one another. And so that was the sort of culture that he inherited, and really did a lot to build trust among the clergy. And so the experience that I have is being one of a very few LGBTQ plus affirming clergy in a diocese that was non-affirming, but being able to work across those commitments and being able to respect one another's mission context, while working for the good of the spread of the gospel, even while we differed on very important issues. But we were able to still work together, still have a lot of respect and communion with one another. And that was a really especially on something like executive council, where you're working with people from all over the diocese, that definitely informs the collaborative vibe that I would hope to bring to serving on executive council.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? All right, seeing none. Stephen, back over to you.
Thank you, Brother Richard. Going alphabetically by office, the secretary of the convention, there was one nominee. It's the Reverend Brother Richard Edward Helmer. Brother Richard, is there anything that you would like to say at this time?
Sure, I've been working on my pitch, so I might as well give it, right? Notwithstanding what I said earlier about using the Constitution and canons as sleep aids when necessary, I actually enjoy the governance work as secretary and in other areas of my work with the church, because I'm keenly interested in the intersection between our governance and where it intersects with our mission in proclaiming the gospel and serving Jesus in our communities. And I bring to this role a lot of love for this diocese and for our people and our ministries and the people in the communities that we serve in Jesus' name. I enjoy working with the leadership of this diocese. Some of them are on this meeting right now, and it's always a joy to be with you and to work with you in this work. And I have experience serving as secretary of the convention since 2020. I've served as a deputy and alternate deputy to General Convention now for over 15 years. I served a full term on standing committee where I was secretary and president. And I've served in deanery leadership and as a priest in this diocese for 22 years. I have to pinch myself when I say that. First as a vicar of Christ Church Seikokai in San Francisco, and then 18 years as rector and currently here at Church of Our Savior in Mill Valley. I helped lead and organize our convention during the pandemic lockdowns where we had to meet online. That was a huge transition for us and a big learning exercise. And we're still mining the fruits of that experience, but I think in good ways. For instance, we learned we could vote electronically and do it well. And we developed resources that really brought us along in our governance for the future. And above all, I'm really passionate about spiritual and religious life, preaching and teaching and building up and renewing our communities by reaching out across generations and across cultures. So that's my elevator pitch. Thank you.
Thank you. And now for the standing committee, beginning with the lay order, I would like to invite Don Miller to introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Don Miller, and I attend St. Clement's Episcopal Church in Berkeley, where I'm currently junior warden on the vestry. I am a Bay Area native, having grown up in Berkeley and attending Berkeley Public Schools. I live in El Cerrito with my wife, Mary, and our two cats, Gracie and Ali. I am called to serve on the standing committee out of the sincere belief that my broad congregational and diocesan experience has prepared for me to contribute to the standing committee as we move forward together during these pivotal times. To confront the problems that we face as a church, I believe that we need to listen to each other and build trust with each other, and especially build trust with our new bishop. And at the same time, share innovative ideas so that we can move forward. As a member of the Bishop Search and Transition Committee, I listened to people in each of the 6 deaneries of this diocese. From that, I was able to discern where we are today and where I believe we need to be tomorrow. My diocesan experience includes serving on the Bishop Search and Transition Committee, where I was a part of the transition subcommittee, the communications team, and advisor to dispatch of business. We ran a successful election oversaw a smooth transition, and communicated effectively all aspects of the search process. Prior to that, I was elected to the Executive Council, where I served on the Governance Committee, but also on the Assessment Relief Committee during COVID-19. Serving on the Assessment Relief Committee was an eye-opener because I saw how churches across our diocese were coping with COVID-19. But even more, I saw how churches were striving to keep their doors open spiritually during the pandemic. I am currently on the board of directors of the Episcopal Impact Fund, a diocesan institution, and I serve on the program committee, which is responsible for recommending congregational, community, and advocacy grants that benefit diverse and underserved communities within our diocese. At St. Clement's, I've served on the vestry 3 times. I've been elected junior warden 3 times, and I am currently chair of the outreach committee. Professionally, my background and expertise is in contract negotiation and management, business analysis, process improvement, and managing large databases. I've worked for large for-profit corporations, eventually landing at Salesforce.com, where I worked for over 5.5 years. While at Salesforce, I heard the call to transition to the nonprofit sector so that I could make an impact on the local community. I've worked in development operations at the Alameda County Community Food Bank and later at Project Open Hand, where I spent 5 years, and I continue to consult there. I'm asking for your consideration, your vote, because I believe that my passion for the church and my abilities will strengthen our diocese. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Our next nominee from the lay order is Vinnie Zhang Miller. Vinnie?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Vinnie Miller. I've been a member at Christ Church at Portola Valley and Woodside over a decade. I raised my twin daughters there. They've been very involved in the church life. I have been serving on the vestry for the past 4 years. And last year I served as a senior warden and led the parish through a pastoral transition. And also I've been active in the Vital and Thriving program, which I believe, has many promises for the future of our parish. Professionally, I am a retired venture capitalist. I'm very passionate about environmental sustainability, and I continue to make investment in sustainable housing project, currently in a company called House Me. And then I've also started 2 nonprofit organizations. One is called Ballroom Spirit Foundation, supporting our youth dancers for their future tomorrow. Second one is called Legion Guohua Foundation, which is a art foundation promoting Chinese art and culture, and also the preservation of such. I am also serving on the board of Berkeley Art Museum Pacific Film Archive. So with all the nonprofit experience, as well as parish vestry experience, I look forward to further contribute myself on the diocese level. And I also look forward to learn from many distinguished members on various committees, so I can continue to my own self-development. I feel today's church, everybody is going through challenges. It is important for us to bring relevance, purpose, and community as the key attributes why people are coming to church. Born and raised in China, I am the first generation immigrant into United States. And I feel I also would add value in understanding and collaborating with various communities especially the Asian community. So if you would have me, I would love to be of contribution.
Thank you, Vinny. Next, we'll hear from our nominees from the clergy order, beginning with the Reverend Jim Dolan.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for having me. I grew up in a Baptist church outside Chicago. I was baptized in high school at a mega church outside Chicago. Then in college, made my way to the beauty of the Episcopal Church. Then I went to a Methodist seminary, Duke Divinity School. Then eventually went through discernment and went through the Episcopal Seminary of the Southwest down in Austin, Texas. But I've just had a lot of diverse experiences. The year after I graduated college, I worked in Mexico with children in like a very low income neighborhood. Then I became a college swim coach for a couple years. Then I took a year off and I moved to Vail, Colorado, and I worked at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. And it was fun because in Mexico, I knew families of like 7 that made $20 a week. And then I was in the Ritz-Carlton where the average family spent $8,000 to $10,000 for a week. And oftentimes weren't necessarily happier. I also volunteered to teach English to mostly Spanish-speaking immigrants. And I got to snowboard 105 days, which isn't bad, while on top of everything else. I've been here 5 years as of this past Sunday. So 5 years and 2 days. Came here from Western North Carolina. And yeah, I just think I bring a lot of experience and diverse thinking and experience, both in other denominations and in other dioceses. And I think our diocese does some things incredibly well. And I think there's some things we could also be rethinking. So we all know we need to grow. We all know we need younger people. It's just, what are we going to do about it? So I have some ideas and I have a unique background. So that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Next, we have the Reverend Beth Foote. Beth.
Hi. Good evening, everybody. It's an honor to be here with you, and I'm running for standing committee. I am very much a local of the diocese. I grew up here in the East Bay, and I was raised up for ordination at Christ Church, Alameda. Went to CDSP for my MDiv, and I was ordained to be a priest in 2008 at Grace. And I began my ordained ministry at Trinity Menlo Park, where I did know Annalise Deal at another time of her life, and saw some of her call coming to the fore. So I was there almost 7 years, first as family ministries director and then associate rector. And, it's been interesting hearing people talking about intergenerational ministry, because it's something that I'm very interested in and passionate about. And I think it's so important in the church going forward. And when I left Trinity in 2013, I discerned a call to be an intentional interim. And I have done that ever since. And it's been very fulfilling and brought me a lot of joy. I served at St. Anne's Fremont twice and at All Saints San Francisco. And I was at All Saints during the pandemic, which was a very challenging time for all of us, but at All Saints, it was especially challenging that we had to move from Anglo-Catholic worship to Zoom. And I found that to be a big challenge, but one that really brought people together in that transitional period that we were living through under an interim time. And I really have enjoyed being an interim and getting to know people all around the diocese. I've also served as short-term interims in a number of places and been sabbatical priest. I have served in 5 out of the 6 deaneries, I realized. I have the only place I haven't been is Marin. And maybe that's up ahead, I don't know. But this gives me, I think, a very broad view of the diocese, that I think I can bring that to the standing committee. I've also been on the Commission on Ministry, and I have served on the Episcopal Impact Fund. And I continue to be a member of the Brotherton Board of Directors. I have just finished a kind of a different interim position. I was interim director of contextual education at CDSP for 2 years. And what that really means is I'm in charge of the field ed program. I was in charge of the field ed program where students went out into a parish, sometimes a nonprofit, and worked with a mentor and the parish. And what I saw was so interesting that I hadn't really realized that our diocese has been training seminarians for like 100 years. And especially those parishes in Berkeley, like All Souls and St. Clement's. And, it showed me, I think, that we have the capacity to train people for all sorts of ministry. And we haven't really explored that, but I think there's possibilities there. I see some issues that are before us that I think I can offer my experience to. The high cost of living affects all aspects of our Bay Area life, including the church. It's very expensive for priests to live here. And post-pandemic, many of our churches continue to struggle. As a diocese, I believe we need to attend to the health of our congregations and also support our clergy as they lead those congregations. And I'm in between interims. I hang out at Christ Church Alameda, where my husband continues to be a member. And they are really thriving. And I see how they have reached out to the wider community through their homeless work and are reaching people who are yearning for connection and belonging. And it's made me think, how can we share that good news of Jesus Christ and continue to intentionally build thriving communities of faith that are intergenerational? And how can we do that? And maybe scale up these things that I have seen work in successful, thriving communities. And lastly, I wonder, how can our diocese better reflect the diverse population of the Bay Area? So I am excited about the future here in the diocese, and I look forward to working with Bishop Austin if I'm elected to standing committee. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beth. At this time, we've heard from all of the nominees for the standing committee, and I think it would be an appropriate time for questions and for these nominees. Brother Richard.
Yes, please. And Ellie, if you can help me watch and raise questions, I'd appreciate it. Second call. Any questions for our nominees for standing committee?
Darren Miner, thank you for raising that issue. There is one candidate for standing committee who is not here this evening, at least not from what I can tell. The Reverend Stephen Tiffinson was unable to be here this evening. And unless he's joined, Ellie, if you're able to see on your end, I didn't see it on mine.
I'm not seeing it.
Thank you. Reverend Stephen Tiffinson is our last nominee for standing committee, but unfortunately was unable to make it this evening.
Any other questions? Deb White wanted to ask Jim Dolan to talk about his experience with polity in the Episcopal Church.
Yeah, thank you. I also wanted to say I forgot to mention I'm the rector at St. Augustine's Episcopal Church in Oakland. And so very proud to be at St. Augustine's. Again, 5 years here. Feels like it flew right by. In the church I came from in Western North Carolina, I was on standing committee. And again, it was a situation like this where we had just elected a new bishop. And then I got elected to standing committee, faithfully served. It was a great time. I also was part of the dismantling racism training. I would co-lead that back in that diocese. In this diocese, I'm on the task force for truth telling and reconciliation with Stephen Tellefson. I think I'm saying that right. He's really great, and I'm sorry he's not here because it's been really great working with him on that committee. And yeah, I'm excited to work on the standing committee here. So that's my involvement in the polity of the Episcopal Church as a very proud rector of St. Augustine's in Oakland.
Stephen, can you just remind us one more time how many candidates are standing for standing committee? Standing for standing committee, there we go.
Thank you. For the standing committee, there are 5 nominees, 2 from the lay order and 3 from the clergy order, and we will elect 1 from each order. And for executive council, the same number of nominees, 5, 2 from the clergy order and 3 from the lay order. And we will elect 2, at least one of which must be lay.
And is it, I believe it's also the case that we're going to be electing a third person to standing committee, a second lay person to fill an unexpired term. Is that correct?
So sorry, that's correct. Yes, there is a resignation that will be effective the day of convention. And so we will be electing a second lay person to fill the unexpired term of that position.
Great. Thank you for that. Okay.
Thank you. Our last nominee is the nominee for treasurer of the diocese, Lane Ringley. Lane?
Stephen, thank you very much. I think I'm the only one standing between potentially a late dinner and even bed for some of those in different time zones. I'll be brief. I'm honored to be nominated for the treasurer position at the 175th convention. I've served as your treasurer since 2021. During my tenure, I've had the pleasure to provide advice to not only our CFO, bishop, executive council on financial matters related to our diocese and work with congregations to assist them in some of their financially related issues and concerns. My professional background is in consulting with public, private, and nonprofit organization boards of directors and management teams on financial performance and governance issues. And I think that serves me well in my work with the role as treasurer. Through these experiences, I've become familiar with financial accounting and budgeting issues across different types of organizations to supplement my graduate education in finance. I also served a term on executive council, finishing my term as chair. Further, my current work on my congregation's vestry and finance committee helped keep me grounded in some of the topics and concerns and issues of our parishes and missions. I will continue to be a strong financial steward of the diocese resources, ensuring that we drive our mission and focus and strengthen our church in the Bay Area. Appreciate your time this evening and consideration of my nomination at our upcoming convention. Stephen, I'll hand it back to you for any questions.
Thanks so much, Lane. I would just like to take this opportunity to thank each of the nominees for stepping forward and for their nomination into this electoral process of discernment. I'm very grateful, and we are all very grateful for your willingness to serve the diocese, and to each of your nominators for discerning that you should be nominated. And I'm grateful for those people who, for one reason or the other, determined that they had to withdraw their nomination. They too are excellent leaders in the church, and I appreciate their service and the ways they plan to serve in the future. And again, thanks to Brother Richard, Ellie, for your tremendous work supporting the committee, and to each member of the Committee on Nominations for all the work that we've done this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, and a big shout out to you for your leadership of the Nominations Committee now for the second year. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank Dave Franquist for his superb leadership of the Committee on Resolutions, and for all of the members of the Committee on Resolutions for their diligent work. And another shout out to Ellie Simpson, who keeps the Committee on Dispatch of Business chunking along to get ready for this convention. She works very hard, and she works very diligently with me and with the other leadership of the convention.
Brother Richard, there was one question in chat that came to me. I'll go ahead and read it. How does the work of the treasurer differ from that of the canon for diocesan finance? The canon is the employed chief financial officer for the diocese that works on a day-to-day basis on preparing the financial statements, helping with decisions related to financial issues overall, working with the Dow House staff and also congregations. The treasurer is the elected position from the congregations in our diocese to work with the treasurer and also lead the finance committee, which is also comprised of largely lay and clerical members to address key issues on finance. So it's a collaborative relationship with the CFO, the candidate for diocesan finance, but we have essentially different responsibilities. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you so much, Lane, for jumping in to tackle that question. And thank you for your hard work. All right, Ellie, back over to you. Is there any other business we need to cover this evening?
That was the agenda. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who came. Your thoughtfulness and listening ears are well appreciated, and your many questions. And we look forward to seeing you at convention this year.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. You as well.
Good night.
Good evening, everybody.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.